If you've been with us since the start of this program, I'm sure you're beginning to wonder, how much longer is this withdrawal process going to last? At the most, you have one more difficult day of physical symptoms. Now we're going to tackle the long-term prospects for success, how to keep on keeping off. Don't miss this program. Well, we must have somebody here that wants to talk to me tonight. Where are they? Where are my selectees? Here comes one, walking right down here. Oh, good. Again, selected at random. Come on up, sir. Hi.
How do you do?
What's your name?
Pat.
Pat. How much are you used to smoking, Pat, before you came to this program?
Less than a pack a day.
Less than a pack a day. What made you decide that that was a good thing to get rid of?
My wife kind of convinced me.
Your wife convinced you?
Yes.
Are you quitting smoking for your wife or for yourself?
Both. Mainly for myself, but when my wife decided to quit, I figured it was as good a time as any for me to quit too.
Yeah. It's very important. It's nice to get your wife to get you started, but in the end it must be for you. Because you see, if you quit for your wife or you quit for your kids, sooner or later you're going to get mad at your wife, right? And then you're going to know how to get even with her, right? So it's very important that you make the transition, that the main person you're quitting for, there's only two people I think are fit to quit for, yourself and your God. Because those you shouldn't get mad at, right?
True.
And if you get mad at yourself, that's not really good. You need to keep your ego system intact. Well, how's the program been going for you?
Terrific. I've very little discomfort at all. I had a little disorientation. I was tired for a while, but
That's going away?
yeah, other than that, I feel great.
Was it easier than you thought it would be?
If I knew it was going to be this easy, I would have quit a long time ago.
All right. Oh. It seems like there's a lot of others out there that are having a little tougher time of it.
Well, I think it's because of the program itself. I've never seen anything like this, public education part of it. I quit on my own one time, and it was a nightmare.
Uh-huh.
And I lasted about 20 months, and I went back to smoking, and I never quit since then until now. But I think the educational part of this is amazing. I mean, and it makes it so much easier.
So you've been off since the first night?
Yes.
Shall we give him a big hand? I think that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's come right on up here. Hi there. Would you mind giving us your name?
My name's Dale Hebert.
Dale, and how much were you used to smoking?
Oh, pack and a half.
And where's your button?
I didn't earn it the first night.
Oh, you didn't earn it the first night?
No.
But now you deserve one?
I think so. I went, 2 days. 2 days.
2 days.
Yes, sir.
But you didn't get one last night?
Well, I had to skip last night.
Oh, you skipped last night. Well, let me be one to...
Thank you.
Let me be one to give you a button here. Now that you're into the program, how do you feel about it?
I feel great about the program. I still feel pretty miserable
Uh-huh.
in terms of quitting.
What symptoms have you been having?
Yesterday I was really tired.
Uh-huh.
I could not stay awake for the life of me. I was traveling. Ordinarily, I never sleep on a plane. I could not stay awake. And so it was kind of tough.
You feeling better today?
I feel more awake today, a little more anxious.
Let's take a look out here at the audience. Who's waking up? Feels a little awaker. Aha! You see that? Things are going to improve. I told you that if you get your rest for 3 days, you will have paid back most of what you owed your system from all that lack of sleep, chronic fatigue that you get on the caffeine trip. They're coming. They're waking up.
Right.
the twinkle is coming. Just look out there. Isn't that a beautiful group?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Doesn't sound too convincing, does it? So, you think this time you're going to put it away and keep it away?
I think so, yeah. I had quit for 5 years, and if memory serves me, I think it was following one of your programs at Beaumont.
That was several years ago, because I haven't been at Beaumont for a while.
Maybe 83, 84.
And then you went back. As long as we're going to discuss that tonight, can you recall the situation that took you back?
To tell you the truth, no.
Too far
I
away?
don't remember having an urge to start smoking again. I really don't know why.
I could probably guess, but we'll talk about it later.
Okay.
Let's give the man a big hand. You have a happy smile.
Yeah.
And what's your name?
Diane Henry.
Diane, and how much were you used to smoking?
About a pack a week.
A pack a week. These people think you aren't even a smoker,
I smoked for about 12 years.
but you're glad to get rid of it?
I quit December 26th.
Oh, you quit even before the program started, and you came for a little reinforcement. Is it helping?
Yep, I'm just kind of nervous for some kind of stressful moment. You know, like I want one right now.
This is not the time to have one. And you feel good about it.
Yeah, I do. Feel
And
really good.
I feel good about your quitting. Let's give her a big hand. Can we do that? While I'm talking with this young lady, I'd like a couple people that got off today for the first time. I mean, since last night. Who would you be prepared to come, or who else? All right. Why don't you make your just get over here so we don't waste a lot of time. Hi. What's your first name?
Kathy.
Kathy.
Yeah.
And Kathy, how much were you smoking?
Pack a day.
Pack a day. And you've been
Yeah.
doing that for how long? She don't want to say.
Yeah. 10 years.
10 years. You
Yeah.
started real young. And how's the program been going for you?
Very well.
Where's your button?
And my coat.
You're supposed to wear that with pride. You
I
know?
do, I
Oh, you
do.
do. Oh, you
I
do.
do.
All right. What symptoms have you been having?
Actually, I quit the day after Thanksgiving, and I had an idea that I might have a relapse over the
So
holiday.
you're here for reinforcement.
So,
You think
yeah.
it's helping?
Very much.
And how are you feeling about it now?
I'm not going back.
Give her a hand. Shall we do that? Thank you. Now, just a minute. Wasn't you the fellow that I saw in the hall last night that said I'm a failure and I'm not coming back? Or
No, I had to go to work last night when I wanted to be here, but I felt like I failed myself yesterday because I smoked one yesterday, and maximum stress day at work, and I snatched a cigarette from your wife, as a matter of fact.
where's his wife? She's not here?
No, she's not here. She's a wimp. Am I right?
Yeah, but maybe
But
she's...
I made it,
You made it.
and I wanted my pin now. Thank you.
Let's give him a big hand. And
For mine.
you're waiting
I'm
for
ready
yours
for mine, too.
What's your name?
Sue Cutler.
Sue, and you're just a little slow learner, or you just...
I couldn't stop in the car. I would have one on the way to work and one on the way home.
just
and
on... But where
In
were
your
you...
pep talk last
But
night,
where were you getting those cigarettes?
I stopped and I bought a pack. I couldn't stand it. And I had two
Well, what made
cigarettes
you
each day.
decide now that that was a bad, unacceptable behavior?
Your pep talk last night
That helped.
got to me.
That got to you.
Yeah.
It worked.
I knew
Wow.
you, for some reason, it
Well, I
was...
prayed for you last night. Maybe that helped. Okay.
Well, it worked.
Well, so what do you think now?
I feel good.
It wasn't
You
as
know.
bad today as it was those other days. True
No.
or false?
No, it wasn't.
That's the
It was
thing that
easier.
people have to learn. You know, it's harder to have 1, 2, or 3 cigarettes than it is to have none. You got to get down to
Zero.
zero. And you think you're going to make it this time?
I know I will now.
Let's give her a big hand. Yeah, great. Now, I'm sure there's some others here today that deserve one for the first time. Would you stand up, and my helpers will give you a pin. Stand right up. And let's give them a big hand. Stand right up. Those people that are making it for the first time. Let's get them all. Everybody gets a pin over here. Now, after we get them a pin, do you remember that first night we had this auditorium almost full or a little bit over full? Look at here. They're still over full. Isn't that good? Don't you think these people are really doing good to keep coming back here, working on this program? Everybody, including those who just stood that hasn't smoked in 24 hours, I want to see you stand now. Well, let's just stand. If you haven't smoked in the last 24 hours, I want you, including those who are support people, stand up. I want to see what we're doing here. Ooh, just look at that and give them a big hand. Would you do that? Everybody. Let's have a seat. And just a final little word to those who haven't quite made it yet, do not become discouraged. I'm going to talk to you tonight. Wouldn't it be nice if we could get 100%? I think we ought to be able to work toward 100%. We're getting close to that. I'm sure 95% there already. And just a few more of you, we got to do a little something to get you over the hump. And I really want to see that accomplished. Now, we've got to get right down to business. Stopping smoking, kind of tough. You've been through quite a bit, most of you, right? And those of you who have been off since the first day, the good news is, the very good news is, that you've put in the worst of the physiological stress mechanism. I can guarantee you that tomorrow will be a better day than you've had so far. Now, it won't be all over with, but by and large, you will have excreted the nicotine. Some of you got started a little later. It will be a day or two down the line. And the worst of the physiological symptoms will be over. You will be able to concentrate at work again. You should be waking up. That terrible airhead feeling that you complained about should be going away. The headaches should be disappearing. And you will begin to feel somewhat normal again. Now I think it's time we begin to focus on the long term. You've heard several people here, have you not, tell how they got off. 2 months, 5 months, 5 years. I've seen people go back to smoking as many as 20 years after they quit. Now, one of the problems that I'd like you to be aware of, sometime along about this, you're quitting smoking, and someone says to you, "Oh, you're quitting smoking? You know, I quit 2 years ago, and I'd still love to have a cigarette." And when they say that, you say to yourself, "Oh my goodness, if I'm going to feel like this in 2 years, forget it." Now, what it's important for you to do is ask them this question. Do you ever go a whole day without thinking about a cigarette? You know what they'll say? "Oh, sure." But most people that smoke enjoy it. And it's amazing. George was. But George was a smoker. And George got a stroke and he died. And his wife still comes over to see us occasionally. And when she talks about her husband, I frankly wonder if it's the same man. Because he was the finest, noblest, most loving husband that anybody ever had. What happened? You see, she's forgot about the unpleasantness that she used to talk so much about, and all she can remember is the pleasant times they had together. Now, unfortunately, in a way, the same thing happens about your smoking habit. As time goes on, you forget about your mouth tasting like the Russian army camp there overnight. You forget about the burned clothes, the ashes, the stink, everybody saying, get that stuff out of there. And you just remember those pleasant times when you sat down and you had the nice music and you relaxed and you fulfilled your addiction and got rid of the withdrawal pain, and it all comes sweeping back and you think how pleasant it was. But let me tell you this, as you stay off cigarettes, the time will come, and will come quite soon, when you'll go whole days without thinking about a cigarette. I promise. Sometimes it reminds me a little bit of the way I feel about mangoes. 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 You see, I and my family spent 5 years in Pakistan where I was a mission surgeon. And in that tropical country, they had mangoes. Mangoes. Delicious, succulent, juicy mangoes. My kingdom for a mango. I want a mango, mango, mango. My salivary glands are squirting like this. I need a mango. Get me a mango. But you know what? I went all day without a mango. And you know what? I didn't even think about mangoes till I needed the illustration to point out how when you think back, yes, would I love a mango? For sure. But will I get a mango? No. And will I survive? Yes. And will it spoil my day? No. The same thing with your cigarette habit. Short order, you'll be going whole days without thinking about it. But we need to be alert. Are you listening? We need to be alert, because your brain will play tricks on you. This is the thing we've got to keep alert. Let me tell you a story. Phone rang one night, about 10 o'clock. Hello, this is Jim. Yes, Jim? You remember me? Well, which Jim is it? Oh, I was the fellow that came to your stop smoking clinic about 4 months ago. Doc, you don't know how glad I was to be off cigarettes. I was telling everybody, you got to get to that stop smoking clinic. I was practically an evangelist. I was practically taking away cigarettes from people. I was telling everybody that's the dumbest habit in all the world. I came home one night. I sat down in my easy chair. I looked across the room, and there was the humidor where I used to keep my cigarettes. I never knew anybody kept their cigarettes in humidors, but he did apparently. And I kept thinking, I wonder if I left any cigarettes in that humidor. After a while, I got up and I went over there and I opened the humidor. Would you believe it? There in that humidor was a pack, my old favorite cigarettes, and just 2 cigarettes in there. I said to myself, boy, am I glad I don't smoke anymore. And I closed the humidor. Doc, over the next 24 hours, those 2 cigarettes drove me nuts. I came back the next night and I sat down. I kept looking across the room at the humidor. I said, I wonder if those cigarettes are still there. I finally got up, I walked across the room, and I opened the humidor. Would you believe they were gone? I said, I wonder what happened to those cigarettes. I bet my wife saw me looking in there. Wonder what she did with them. Probably threw them in the trash. Sure enough, there in the bottom of that wastebasket was that pack with 2 cigarettes in it. I said, you know, I've heard that after you're off smoking for a while, if you take a puff, it'll make you dizzy. I bet if I did that, it would reinforce my smoking decision. So I lit this cigarette. I took a couple puffs, and it made me dizzy. I put it out. I stuck the other cigarette in my pocket. Doc, I'm back at 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Do you have another one of those there clinics? This is an unadulterated story that I heard on the phone this night, but I think it illustrates the point. Where did he lose the battle with cigarettes? He lost the battle with cigarettes at least when he found them and he didn't destroy them, you see, because at that moment, what did he do? He made provisions to smoke. If he'd have found those cigarettes, say, what are those doing here? Wadded them up and threw it away, he would have reinforced his decision. But now he had to go back through this whole withdrawal process again because he let his brain play tricks on him. I want you to be very alert to these thoughts. When a thought comes to your mind that suggests that you want to make provision to smoke, don't. Don't. Are you listening? Be very alert. Because for most people, it's like being an alcoholic. It doesn't take 6 packs to put you back to smoking. How many took 1 cigarette and found themselves back to smoking again? Let me see your hands. That's about all it takes. And then it's 2, and then it's 4, and before long, you're out to buy the whole pack. You don't want to go through this again, do you? No. So keep the mind alert to tricks that it'll try to play on you. Now, it's very important that I explain to you what the real risk factors are. I once saw a map of, it was back about the time of Columbus or something. It had these continents loosely drawn on them. And then out here where they didn't know what it was, it said on that map, there are dragons here. Well, believe me, there are dragons out there. They're out to get you. What do you think is the #1 association that people write down as being associated with their going back to smoking? Somebody says coffee, but that isn't the #1, at least on the one we got. Alcohol. Some alcohol-associated thing takes more people from my clinics back to smoking than anything else. It seems that they get to a party. They get a glass in one hand, and they get a couple of drinks, and the willpower goes down, and the urge goes up, and they were used to having a glass in that hand and a cigarette in this hand, and somebody's there with a cigarette, and they think, well, I can have a cigarette tonight. I'm okay. I don't smoke anymore. And before the night is done, they're back to smoking again. #1 association. Some alcohol association. Now, I can't tell you when to drink again, but I can tell you this. If you're really serious about staying off smoking, I wouldn't have a drink till I no longer had an urge to have a cigarette, and then I would hope that maybe I wouldn't need the alcohol too. I could talk to you about alcohol, and I get all upset about it. Terribly upset, since one little 4-year-old friend of mine was killed by a drunk driver, and I decided that never again in my life would I support this industry. But staying off smoking, stay away from alcohol, at least until you no longer have an urge to have a cigarette, and then you might discover that life can be good without alcohol. Okay? Doesn't it make sense to you? Just think about this for a minute. That we could go through life without something to alter my brain, to kick it up, to kick it down, to tranquilize it. I could take life's joys and life's sorrows, life's pleasures and life's problems without some mind-altering drug. That seems like a good way to me. That's the kind of lifestyle I like to lead. And I find it quite interesting. And there's nothing quite so boring as going to a cocktail party when everybody's getting drunk. But I've been to a few of them. But nowadays, it's sort of good news, you know. Used to be that anybody with a glass of orange juice or something they thought was particularly queer. But nowadays I find there's a lot of people that are wising up and finding they can go to social occasions, and people don't laugh anymore when you say, just give me a Virgin Mary, or give me some orange juice, or something like that. So stay off until at least you no longer have an urge to have a cigarette. What do you think is the number 2 situation that people write, at least, takes them back to smoking? Well, you think about caffeine, and it may well be, but that's not the number 2 thing they write back to me. Stress. Stress. Some stress situation. Most smokers, when they get stressed, what do they want to do? Smoke. I actually have a set of slides that was made for me, some cartoons by an artist of things that people have actually written to me and told me that took them back to smoking. One lady, I picked up the letter and there were actually tear stains on the letter. And it said something like this: Doctor, I could kick myself from here to Mexico City. I had a fight with my husband last night. I lost the fight with my husband. I lost the battle with cigarettes in the same evening. Do you have any more clinics? You see, she was a double loser that night. Is there anybody here that doesn't have stress? Everybody has stress. I keep seeing it. You know? Somebody dies. Husband runs off with his secretary. Kids run around with bums. Flunk a test. Lose a job. I remember one night I was driving down in Detroit and had 2 flat tires about 3 o'clock in the morning when I was going for an operation. That's stress. But does that solve problems? To smoke under those circumstances? No. Now I taught you one slogan. You learned it. What was it? I love being free from smoking. Now we're going to come up with our next slogan, and it's very important because you'll no sooner leave here in a day or 2 or 3, there's going to be a stressful situation, and every brain in your body is going to start hollering, cigarette, cigarette, cigarette. And then we must be prepared for it, right? And this is our slogan. Does cigarettes solve problems? No. So here's what we say out loud. Cigarettes don't solve problems. Now let's say it together. Cigarettes don't solve problems. Yeah, one more time so we learn it. Cigarettes don't solve problems. Cigarettes create problems. Cigarettes complicate problems. They're like the Watergate. Nixon had the Watergate trying to solve a problem. Did he solve his problem? No, he lost his presidency over that little monkey shine. Cigarettes, what? Don't solve problems. So when the issue comes up, you see, you're prepared. Oh, cigarettes don't solve problems. You see, because if we go back to smoking then, we still have to solve the problem. Then we got to solve the smoking problem all over again. You don't want to do that, do you? Cigarettes what? Don't solve problems. Okay, you got it. What part does caffeine play? Several of you have mentioned it. It seems to be, in general, a delayed response. It goes something like this. And it's a little hard to get a solid hand on it. And I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I don't give you any monkey shines here. Anything I tell you has been tested, checked, and we know. Caffeine is a little more difficult to get a hold of because it goes like this. Hello, Doc? Yeah. Have you got any more of those clinics? Why are you asking? I'm smoking. How did that happen? I don't really know, Doc. I was off for about 6 months. Then I started getting a little nervous. Next question. When did you go back on your caffeine? Oh, a couple of weeks ago. I thought I was off now and it wasn't bothering me anymore. How much coffee are you drinking? Oh, as much as I did before, you know. I started out with 1 cup, but now it's up to 5. Do you think my going back to coffee had anything to do with it? Yeah, had a lot to do with it. And so I'm going to say the same thing for the coffee that I said for the alcohol. Stay off it until you no longer have an urge, and that goes for all the other caffeine beverages, tea, Coke, Tab, Dr. Pepper, whatever it is, until you no longer have an urge to have a cigarette. And hopefully by then, you'll discover you can live without coffee. There is life after coffee. And it's a better life. How many of you are feeling awake, fairly well awake today without coffee? Let me see your hands. You're going to be more awake tomorrow. Won't that be good news? And your fatigue light comes on. You need your rest, you'll get it. Doesn't that make good sense? Not to short out the fatigue light on your body. And I would suggest even the decaffeinated coffee that you leave it off because of the psychological associations. Now you say, what can I have? You want something brown, something hot? Let me write down just a couple of things that you might drink. Personally, I'm not addicted to mostly hot drinks, but some of my coffee drinking friends find these fairly good. Roma. Now you might find these in some of the stores or some of the health food stores. If you want places to find them where they're cheaper, you see me and I'll tell you personally. What is Roma? Roma, it's brown beverage that you put in hot water, and some people, it's a hot drink. It's made from grains, and it doesn't have any caffeine in it. And my coffee drinking friends tell me that's about the best substitute they've found. But there are some others. Pero, P-E-R-O. And there's another one, Cafex. One of the oldest ones, and probably the least enjoyed by most of my people, is Postum. Probably the easiest to find, but most of the people that tell me they want a substitute, the best one that seems to be Roma, okay? Where do you get them? I think you can get them in some stores, certainly at all health food stores you could find them, and if you want some place, if you like it, give me a call and I'll tell you where you can get it cheaper. Okay? All right. Now, back to staying off smoking. Your physiological urges, by and large, are gone. What isn't gone are the psychological associations. And I should tell you that psychology can turn on physiology. You remember about Pavlov's dogs? They probably taught you that in school. They used to ring a bell, feed the dogs, measure the gastric juice. After a while, they found out that they could just ring the bell, the gastric juice would flow, and they didn't even need to feed the dogs. That's what you call psychological associations. I have one that illustrates it very well. You met my sweet wife here the other night. I should tell you that she's a delicious cook. I mean, she makes good food. And I kind of like to get home and eat that good food. Now, I live on Ridge Road in Northville, and that's a dirt road. It's kind of like the Ho Chi Minh Trail. I mean, there are chuck holes all the way down it. And I don't really get hungry till I hit that first chuck hole on Ridge Road. But when I do that, I know that I'm heading home, and my stomach starts to growl, and my appetite begins to pick up. Now, I've noticed something very interesting, that sometimes I might go, say, to Warren and put on a stop smoking clinic, and I go right past the supper hour, it doesn't bother me. I come home, end up there about 10 o'clock, but as soon as I hit Ridge Road, you know what? I'm starved. I'm starved, and I come running in there saying, where's the food? She said, you going to eat this late? Well, I'm hungry. Now, occasionally, I admit it doesn't happen very often, but I might have a case scheduled for the afternoon, and it cancels, and I'm late home so many times, I say I'm going to surprise her and sneak in early. So I hit that thing about 3 o'clock, that first chuck hole. I might have eaten lunch at 1, but you know I'm still hungry. Doesn't seem to make any difference. Psychology, turning on physiology. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Now, you've got several psychological triggers that will turn on your urge to have a cigarette even though you don't have a physiological need. And in your booklets on page 30, and you promised me you would do your assignments, there is a page called Master Plan for Blocking Triggers. Master Plan for Blocking Triggers. Now, and you're supposed to write down what those triggers are, your triggers, and what you plan to do to get rid of those triggers, okay? Somebody just give me a trigger that turns on the urge for a cigarette.
Driving a car.
Driving a car. Sure enough. Well, let's talk about driving a car first, and if we had time, we'd work it through together. I'll make you a suggestion. If you like it, write it down. If you have a better one, write your own down. You know, I pointed out you can actually get in a car, start it up, and drive away and not smoke. But you've been smoking so long that you no more get in the car, put the key in the thing, and your brain says, cigarette time, cigarette time, cigarette time. Now, what we know about changing habits is that if we'll do the same thing for about 3 weeks for the same trigger, we'll change the psychological trigger. So what we have to do is put something in the car that we will do instead of smoking. Now, I suggest that maybe you take a package of sugarless gum and stick it up there. So you get in the car, you turn on the switch, you take a stick of gum and you start chewing on it. You may become addicted to gum. But you'll probably be able to get off that much easier than you get off cigarettes. You may want to put a package of toothpicks up there and chew on a toothpick. Very few people die of Dutch elm disease from chewing toothpicks. Okay? You got the idea. Telephone rings, someone says, got to have a cigarette. You see the telephone rings? I need a cigarette, phone's ringing. All right, what to do? I'll tell you what one lady did. It's interesting to show how it works. She told me she took the telephone out of the kitchen and she put it in the bedroom. She never smoked in the bedroom. So time she walked back to the bedroom and there she was in the bedroom talking to the phone, it didn't seem to bother her at all. I've suggested that people take and put a doodle pad by the telephone. When they pick it up, you know, you can start writing things on there like, I love being free from smoking. If there's bad news, you write on there, cigarettes don't solve problems. You can draw skull and crossbones. You can make symbols like you see around the auditorium there. You can twirl this thing in your figure. You can even chew on the eraser. You see? If you do that every day for 3 weeks, you will have re-educated your pattern. Other triggers. After meals. After meals, always calls for a cigarette. The best solution I've found for that is to immediately get up from the table and split. Go do a little exercise or something like that. Go for a little walk. Go get on your exercise bike. But don't sit there. Get up and go. All right, you've got the idea now, right? Now, there's one other thing you must be particularly alert to. Watch out for situations that you know is going to cause trouble. Are you listening? I'll give you a couple of illustrations. I went to work in the office there at the university, and one of my nurses, Maureen, smoked. She didn't want me to know she smoked. She made up her mind I would never catch her smoking. She didn't know that every time I walked by her, she smelled like an ashtray. But, you know, smokers don't know they stink, so it's no problem. So I decided not to say anything to her. She wanted to play the game, I would play her game. One day, I left the office. This was her trigger to light a cigarette. The only problem was this day I had forgotten something at the office. Not on purpose. But I forgot something, and I spun around, and I went back in, and there was my nurse, Maureen, with her cigarette. She was so alarmed, she put it in the desk and set the desk on fire. Deeply embarrassed. After we had the fire put out, she said, Doctor, I've been thinking of coming to one of your smoking clinics. I said, Maureen, how fortunate, I've got one coming up. She came to the smoking clinic. She quit smoking. It was just in the fall of the year, just before the holidays. She came to me and she said, Doctor, one of the other university doctors is having a cocktail party. I've got to go. If I go to the cocktail party, I'll drink, and if I drink, I'll smoke. What should I do? I said, stay home. She says, he won't understand. I've got to go, and if I go, I'll drink, and if I drink, I'll smoke. I said, do you want to smoke? No. I said, well, then go and don't drink. She says, I never went to a cocktail party I didn't drink. And if I go to the cocktail party, I'll drink, and if I drink, I'll smoke. Oh, I said, Maureen, you have a catch-22. Do you want to smoke? No, I don't want to smoke. But I got to go to the party, and if I go, I'll drink, and if I drink, I'll smoke. I said, Maureen, let's see if we can get a plan. Now listen, this is the clue. Have a plan. I said, she was single. I said, and are you going to take a date? Well, I might, she said. I said, take a non-smoking, non-drinking date. She says, I didn't know there were any fellas like that. I said, there are. And maybe I can help you find one. It was interesting. She came back from the party and she said, you know, it wasn't bad. She said, I told him, if you see me reaching for a drink, stop me. If you see me reaching for a cigarette, take me home. She ended up marrying the man. And they do not smoke and they do not drink in that house. Now, isn't that beautiful? Maureen, my nurse. But you see, why was it possible for her? She had a plan when she went. You see, if she'd went there with a smoking, drinking man, she would have smoked. But she had a plan. If you know you're going to get into a situation where you can smoke or drink, be prepared ahead of time and know how you're going to handle it so you don't get in trouble. It was on a Friday night, and one of the ladies that was there told me, Doctor, what am I going to do this weekend? My daughter graduates from Ohio State. I've got to go down and pick her up. If there's any time I smoke, it's when I'm in my car. I've got an 8-hour trip. What am I going to do? Help me. I said, let's get a plan, you see. So we worked this out for her a little bit. I said, don't take any cigarettes. If you have to stop for gas, stay away from the cigarette machine. Take along plenty of stuff to chew on. Get some sugarless gum, get some carrot sticks, get some toothpicks. In case you get tired of something, you got something else. Then I said, if worse comes to worse, you can do like I used to do with the kids. She says, what's that? Well, I said, we had 6 kids. Now, I don't know if you folks ever took 6 kids on a trip or not. But you put these kids in the back of the station wagon, you know, and you got a 300-mile trip, and you go about 10 miles, and they say, are we there yet, Daddy? And pretty soon, there's some hassling going on back there, and they say, he did it, no, she did it, and it gets a little bit unbearable after a while. So I used to say, okay, kids, we're going to stop the car now, and we're going to have a Chinese fire drill. So I'd get all 6 kids out of the car, and I'd say, I want you to run around this car till I tell you to stop. So here go the kids around and around and around the car. till they're all pooped out, and then I put them back in the car, and they'll be quiet for a while again. Some of them might even take a nap. So I told her, if worse comes to worse, you know, and you just can't stand it any longer, I said, stop the car and have a Chinese fire drill. Go racing around that thing till you no longer have an urge. She came back the following Monday for graduation, and I was very anxious to talk to her. And I said, how did it go? She said, it wasn't as bad as I thought, and I only had 2 Chinese fire drills. But the whole point of it is, if you're going to get into a situation that you know will be trouble, avoid it if you can. If you can't avoid it, have a plan. Now, do not forget to complete your triggers tonight. I think we'll have just a minute or two now to answer any questions, particularly about the long term or anything else that's bothering you. Or someone want to, can we get a microphone down here on this young lady? She wants to ask us a question here. While they're doing that, let me give you a couple of other suggestions you'll find helpful. Move into other areas of personal growth once you stop smoking. Now, tomorrow night we're going to talk to you a lot about a number of programs that we have that you can join in that we think will serve as reinforcement. Increase your physical exercise. Do something about your diet. Broaden your spiritual base. Do something so that you can see that as a person you're getting better and better. This will do a lot to reinforce your decision to stay off smoking. Another thing you'll find very helpful is to help somebody else quit. You know how it's done now. You can work with them. Our next Stop Smoking Clinic is going to be in Southfield on February 8th. I'll give you all that date and information probably Friday or Monday night. Bring somebody. You see how that will reinforce your decision to stay off. Question here.
When you said we were flushing the nicotine out of our systems, what if you didn't follow that? You drank your juice, but you did have something to eat. Does it take longer to flush out?
The answer is if she was eating, and she sounded like she didn't follow the program 100%. But she's wearing a button, so we're kind of proud of that. No, the nicotine will get out in about 3 days. It goes a little faster if you drink because it's excreted by the kidneys. But in 3 days, the nicotine will be gone.
Okay,
and that's why the physiological symptoms will largely disappear in 3 days.
I did all the drinking, but I had a salad the first night. I couldn't go no longer. But so it still won't go out?
But you're doing well, and you'll feel better tomorrow. All right? Other questions? And any other? Yes, right back here. Could you get this lady?
Since we've been off cigarettes for 3 days, is our body starting now to heal itself? Are our lungs starting to clean up?
Everything is going already. It's amazing the body's ability to rehabilitate the damage you do to it if you only give it a chance. And indeed, as I pointed out the other night, as far as your heart is concerned, you've already got 5 years behind you. Your lungs are starting to clear out. That's why many of you are coughing and clearing up that junk. Sure. Your throats are sore, but they're going to feel better in a little bit of time. Other question here tonight? Yes, over here is a lady. Just a minute, we're coming with a microphone, I think, so that everyone can get the question. Speak right into it.
I'm concerned about the long-term effects, the psychological, like depression. I'm really depressed at the prospect of never having another cigarette.
All right, anybody else feeling depressed? All right. Maybe I have just time enough to talk about this, and we'll leave some questions at another night, being how she brought it up. There is a grieving process that people frequently go through when they quit smoking. And in your booklet, there's a section on that. You can look it up, that grieving process. I don't know exactly what page it's on. But you start out, and you feel a lot of things. You go through anger, You could go through doubts and fears and grieving before you come to the acceptance part of it. And some of that is actually back again where your emotions, you know, I told you, the hypothalamus of the brain, that has a lot to do with some of our emotions. It takes a little time for that to get better. Part of it, however, is due to your emotions telling you one thing while your intellect tells you something else. Maybe I can illustrate it this way. You remember I told you about my daughter who was a missionary in Taiwan? And when she was a teenager, I came home one day and I could see she was very depressed. And I said, Karen, what's the trouble? Nothing. I said, something is the trouble. Don't you want to tell me about it? No. After a while, she said, well, yes, Dad, I am depressed. I said, why are you depressed? She said, I ought to break up with Dave. I said, why don't you? She says, I wish he'd call. Now, do you see the situation here? Intellectually, she said, I ought to break up with Dave. Emotionally, she said, I want him to call. And she was very depressed because she didn't have herself fully integrated there, you see. After 2 or 3 days, I came home and I could see she was relieved. She wasn't particularly happy, but there was some tranquility there. And I said, honey, you look like you feel better tonight. She says, I did. I said, did you break up with Dave? She said, yes. And she says, I told him, don't call. So you see, now her intellect and her actions were on the same wavelength. Now, a lot of people, when they quit smoking, intellectually, they're glad they've quit. Emotionally, they say, boy, am I glad I quit, but I'd like a cigarette right now. Do you see the conflict here? And when you can tell yourself honestly, go ahead and climb the wall, baby, you're still not going to have a cigarette. And when you know you mean that, that'll do more to relieve the depression than anything else. Now, while it doesn't fit my illustration here, I'll give you the sequel. Dave was uncomfortable after that because she wanted him to date nobody else, and he thought he should date several others, you see. That was the whole issue. And Dave was the father of that little boy we went to Taiwan to see. So that worked out pretty good. Did you have a question?
I just have a question about weight.
All right. She has a question about weight. Well, let me tell you something. Tomorrow night is the night we're going to talk about how to stop smoking without growing into a size 95, okay? All right, how are you feeling? Are you glad that you've made it the first 3 days here? Let's give yourself a big hand. God bless you, and I'll see you all here tomorrow night.